I played a game of Warhammer the Old World, and for the first time, I played with Renegade crowns. And I have to say, I loved every minute of it. And when I say every minute, I loved the army list building aspect. I loved the way the units looked when I laid them out for the army overview. And I absolutely loved the way the army played. And to make something abundantly clear, the army did not feel like it was broken or overpowered in any way, shape, or form. It just felt like it was right. It just passed the vibe check on many, many, many levels. And I honestly believe that the new Renegade Crowns faction is some of Games Workshop's finest work in... It is the finest work they've done in 2025. And that's coming from someone who likes the Empire Arcane Journal. And it's some of their finest... And I think it is better than the Guard Codex in some ways, which sounds insane. But it's easy. It sounds insane, but it's actually it's not insane, and it's easy to explain why. And I think it's actually some of Games Workshop's best work that they've done since the release of Old World almost 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago now? It might be 2 years ago already. It's very good, and I really feel if you're someone who is, I don't think it's just a faction for old grognards like me. I don't. I think it will really, really, really appeal to old grognards like me. But I do think that even if you're not an old grognard, I think you'll still like it. A good example of this is, you know, I often do I use them as an example in my streams, but if you're like Godlike Poet, for example, Godlike Poet, we all know him, we all love him. He is or the Warpforged, Godlike Poet, Warpforged, stuff like that. But I use Godlike Poet as an example because he's someone that's been playing the game of 40k basically just in 10th edition, and he really made his Sisters of Battle like his dudes. You know, he has so much lore behind them, and he has put so much effort into them. And he's someone that isn't an old grognard. He's someone that isn't, you know, it doesn't have the same level of like nostalgia. I mean, he will also have nostalgia, but he's not pining for older editions like 8th and 9th edition because he didn't play them, right? So even for someone like him, who is a relatively new Warhammer 40k player, I'd still say it's for people like that. It's not a grognard thing. It's do you want a faction that is your dudes? Okay, because no two Renegade Crown armies will be the same. I mean, there'll be some like those with Guard, where people like to go pure infantry, or they like to go pure tank, or they like to go a mixture. You know, there'll be an element of, oh, you know, you'll lead into certain aspects of the Renegade Crowns more than others. There'll be some stereotypical ways of playing them, but overall, I think that they're an army that really can be tailored to what they can really be tailored to, so that they feel unique and they feel like your dudes. And I love that, and I love that, and I think that's one of the most important things about the army, and one of the things that makes it. And we will get into specifics and stuff in a moment. Don't worry, we're talking the high level shit first, and then we're going to talk the high level stuff first, and then we're going to deep dive. But I think there's definitely been less of the your dudes element in Games Workshop tabletop games recently, and I think that there is many examples of this. In, you know, if you look at the game of Kill Team, for example, it has gone from, you know, being able, if you look at the original iteration of Kill Team in 4th edition, which is a long way back, but it really was take whatever you wanted, but take a few, build a kill team, and you could, your Tau kill team, for example, could have some Kroot in it and have some Fire Warriors in it, for example. And then obviously that that was a very early iteration of the game, but when it came back, I mean, when Kill Team first came back, I'm pretty certain it wasn't even called Kill Team. I'm pretty certain it was called Shadows of Armageddon. Does anybody remember that? It would be the first remaster of Kill Team, I'm pretty certain, was called Shadows of Armageddon. And then it became Kill Team version 1. Shadow War Armageddon. That's it. That's it. I was pretty close. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Thank you, Red Scout. So it was originally Shadow War Armageddon. And that was very much bring your own guys. And then you had the first launch of Kill Team, and my understanding is the first modern launch of Kill Team as we know it was around Warzone Octaria. So was that might have been 2nd edition. That might have been 2nd edition. But up until recently, Kill Team was very much bring your dudes. And it was, and now Kill Team is you get a box and that's what you have. You don't get to pick your dudes. There's very little, you buy your Kill Team box and that's it, rather than, hey, there are some pre-made Kill Teams, but also there's some customizable Kill Teams as well. And so that's so the fact that Kill Team is now not a game of you build your dudes and make your Kill Team, and now it's you are piloting, a Kill Team. You're piloting Kill Team Aquila, Kill Team Scion. Do you know what I mean? It is there's a lot less your dudes to the game, which is your dudes. And you're seeing this everywhere. I've just been, people have been telling me about Blood Bowl recently, and that's now very much become the Games Workshop's has done. They've touched Blood Bowl, and well, they've done what they do, and there's a lot of people that aren't happy with Blood Bowl now. And they've touched Horus Heresy, and they've touched Age of Sigmar, they've touched Warhammer 40k, and there's just, there's so little your dudes anymore in Tabletop Wargaming. And then you get, well, not in Tabletop Wargaming, in Games Workshop Wargames, and then you get to Renegade Crowns. And Renegade Crowns, it really, I said this in the intro to the stream, but obviously some of you guys won't have, been there for that because I've been chatting bollocks for ages. But it really feels like Renegade Crowns is what Agents of Imperium should have been. Okay. So Agents of Imperium, I have said I've criticized it very heavily. Because it was essentially a rug pull by Games Workshop, which I think it is an example of, in my opinion, an actual scam. Because you have to remember that Games Workshop, if you actually, this is not a complaining about Agents of Imperium video, but I will go on about it for 1 second, just for a second, not too long. If you remember the communications from Games Workshop about Agents of Imperium, they were actually very cagey about what units you could take. And everyone was just really, really excited for what they thought was going to be Codex Inquisition. And do you remember when I leaked the Codex? I got the Codex early. It fell off the back of a wagon, And I went through it on stream and everyone was really disappointed. And I was like, myself and others were like, thank fuck that this thing got leaked, because could you imagine the amount of people that would have bought into this faction, not realizing that a Codex Agents of the Imperium is basically just a Kill Team catalog. That's all it is. It's just a Kill Team catalog. And so, Agents of Imperium, rather than being this Codex, which should have been the Your Dudes Codex of the edition. It should have been that they could draw things. There should have been Kazakin in there. Kazakin that could have been led by Eisenhorn, so you could recreate that iconic scene. The scene that I think cemented Kazakin as one of the coolest units in all of Warhammer 40k from Malleus. There should have been, regular guardsmen there. There should have been, the fact there's not Tempestus Scions in that codex is insane. It should have really been a huge melting pot. There should have been Land Raiders in there. It should have been, yes, there was so much opportunity for it. And instead it was just, here's a catalogue of kill teams. And so it was what should have been the ultimate Your Dudes codex was actually the exact opposite. Then we get to Renegade Crowns, okay? So if I'm a little bitch and moaning and whine session, let's now get to the positive stuff. Then you get to Renegade Crowns. This book should not be as good as it is. This faction should not be as good as it is. It shouldn't be. This faction is essentially a bunch of random units which have been pulled in from other factions. So there's some Empire State troops in here. There's some, do you know what? It's not even Empire State troops. There are some generic human infantry, generic human veteran infantry, and generic human knights, and generic human veteran knights. It's basically, there's like 4 unique units to the army. And there's 4 unique units to the army and 2 characters. And then what else is in the army is you can draw in outcast wizards from the Border Prince army of infamy, and you can draw in organ guns from basically dwarves. You can draw in bombards from the Border Princes, and there's all these other little bits that you can draw in. All these other little bits that you can draw in. And what's really cool is in the book, there's loads of designers' notes where it's hey, we recommend that you use Free Company Militia to represent, this unit. We recommend that you use Empire State Troops to represent this unit. We recommend you use Bretonnian Men-at-Arms to represent this. We recommend you use Goblin Wolf Riders to represent Hireling Outriders. We represent, you can use, Knights of the Realm or Empire Knights to represent this and this, and so on and so forth. And there's all these, so it's 5 or 6 unique units, and then then several, at least I'd say about a dozen other units that you can kind of draw in from other places. And so, onto the surface, it should just, it's just some Lord Wolf Riders is a GW. That's my dumb idea. I've been trying to sell you. Dude, it works, man. Of course it works. Of course it works. Sorry, if I thought that, Matthew Sinclair, it's a good idea. It's not a dumb idea. It's a good idea. Absolutely works. So there's all sorts of, but that's the thing. That's the thing, Matthew Sinclair. It's not a dumb idea. It's your dudes. Some people will use Mounted Yeomen to represent the Hireling Outriders. Some people will use Empire Outriders or Empire Pistoliers. Some people will use Goblins. Some people might use Wood Elf, Light Cavalry. There's all sorts of things you can do. You could use for your veteran sellswords with great weapons. You could use Empire greatswords, or you could use Bretonnian Foot Knights of the Realm, or you could take both and mix them together. For your sellswords with spears and shields, you could use Empire Spearmen, but you could also use Bretonnian Men-at-Arms. You can mix those together. It's you could use, that's just existing kits. I mean, you could those new Marauders. You could absolutely, do you want some Do you want some sword and board? Do you want some sword and board, like heavy infantry looking guys? Those new Marauders would look amazing for that. In the end, each unit can look different. Yeah, it is the ultimate your dude's army, and I think this is why it's Games Workshop's best work in years, because guys, it's gonna sound kind of fucking crazy, but it's not that long ago when every codex was like this. When every codex was like this. When every model kit was like this. It's not that, when I say not that long ago, I'm talking less than 5 years ago. Way less than 5 years. Like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. We're not talking in the 90s. We're not talking in the early 2000s. We're not talking before the event. We're talking in the last 3 to 5 years. Every codex was like this, where you had not necessarily like codex, but every faction was like this in some capacity, whether it was in your main codex or whether it was in some supplement that Games Workshop released or something. It wasn't that long ago when everything was like this. And so that's why I think Renegade Crowns has struck such a chord with... I think it explains why Renegade Crowns has struck such a chord, not only with... I think with the old world community specifically, because I think it's a fair assessment that the vast majority of people that play old world are probably people that are, I would say, ex-40k players. Because, I mean, everyone I know who played old world basically left 40k for it. Now, whether they left in 8th edition, 9th edition, 10th edition, but basically they you know, the majority of them obviously leaving 10th edition for it, or coming back from when they left in an earlier edition. But the vast majority of them are ex-40k players. And I think the reason why it struck a chord, and I know the reason why it struck a chord with me personally, is because it's an example of the way that things used to be. It's that simple. Yeah. So that's not entirely true. A lot of people new into war games from Total War. Matthew Sinclair, I think that's a great point, and definitely not a factor to be dismissed. All I can say is, in my personal experience, and so that is anecdotal evidence, is that I've only met one person that played Total War and then came over to Warhammer the Old World, but everyone else, that literally one. And I remember going, "Whoa, like you're one of those guys!" Like, yeah, one of those guys. We had a good joke about it. And everyone else I've met is either a returning Warhammer Fantasy player, which there are surprisingly not as many of those, or an ex. You know, there's a few. But obviously 40k Wargaming has grown so much from when Fantasy died. So they actually were surprisingly not in the majority. And the majority are people that, you know, that I've encountered, people that are just like, they played it in the past and now they've been playing Warhammer 40k for a bit. And now they're just like happy to be here, playing Warhammer Fantasy again. And many of them got into it thinking it was going to be a side game, and it's become their main game. I've said this a few times on the channel. I know a lot of people that got into Old World thinking it was just going to be a little side thing for them, and they've left 40k behind because of it, which I don't think any of them expected to do that. I think a lot of them were surprised at I mean, I know genuinely cutthroat 40k tournament winning players who got one little taste of Old World and went, and for peace, I'm out. Yeah, I'm fucking, and this is my thing now. Yeah, that was me, and it shocked me. Yeah, it shocked you. Yeah, and I think we are going slightly off topic here, so I'm going to pull it back in and focus on the main topic in a moment. But it is worth talking about. I think that people think that everyone who plays Warhammer 40k is an absolute diehard fan. And what's interesting is most people who play Warhammer 40k consider themselves to be an absolute diehard fan. And I think it shocks a lot of people, including the people themselves, how easily they find it to go over to another game if that game is just better. If it's just better. I think that's what shocked a lot of people about Old World who've tried it out. 40k players who didn't expect it to become their main game than it has done. Yeah. That's why I think Master I didn't realize I was missing the flavor. Yeah, that's it. That's absolutely it. It's like an Englishman tasting French food for the first time. You laugh at the French food and you're like, I'm not going to eat that fucking shit. And then you eat a proper French lunch in a nice French cafe in a little French town, and you go, oh, yeah, all our food is dog shit, isn't it? No, I don't want to try the frogs, thank you. But yeah, it is a little bit like that. You don't know that you don't know what you're missing. It's like in the Matrix, ignorance is bliss. That's kind of thing. And I think a lot of people this is going to sound a little bit too, it's going to sound a little bit crazy and a little fun, a bit of exaggeration, but I bet Matthew Sinclair will back me up on this one. And Matthew Sinclair, please don't feel obligated to back me up. Please feel free to push back and say, I think you're exaggerating a little bit there, okay? It reminds me a little bit, this is true with K-47 and true with Old World. It reminds me a little bit of that scene when Neo comes out of the Matrix and he's, Morpheus is showing him around the ship and everything. And he goes back into the Matrix for a moment and Morpheus gives him, and at first, Neo's pretty happy to be out of the, he's a bit overwhelmed. But he's going along with it. He's happy to let, sort of Morpheus lead the way kind of thing. And then Morpheus explains what the Matrix is to him. And Neo's immediate reaction is to panic, is to panic. And then, he passes out, wakes up in the cabin, and Morpheus is sat on the edge of the bed, and Morpheus, and he says to Morpheus, I can't go back, can I? And Morpheus says, no. But even if you could, would you want to? And I think that scene is very, very appropriate as a metaphor for how people who have left 40k for Old World feel. At first they panic. Fuck, what? And then they realize, even if they, then they realize they don't want to go back. It's not a perfect metaphor, but I think there's a good bit of humor and a bit of, a grain of truth to the joke, as it were. But yeah, going back to the main topic of Renegade Crowns. So the number one thing I think that makes them so good is how your dudes they are. However, I do want to, unfortunately, bring us back to reality for a moment, because I do know there's going to be a lot of people that want to jump on Renegade Crowns, and I want you all, I would encourage you and love you all to do that. But hang on a second, because I'm not going to sail you down the river without a fucking paddle, right? Renegade Crowns is a niche army. And it's one of those armies which I love right now, but I am a little worried about what will happen to it in the future. Like, will it be around in Old World a 2nd edition or 3rd edition? Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those where I don't think it would be the end. One of those where I'm enjoying it now using my existing Empire army. And if Renegade Crowns went away, I'd be perfectly happy to just play my Empire. And I will still play my Empire, of course. But it's one of those things, you know, I don't want a bunch of people to buy into it thinking this is going to be a faction which is going to be suddenly a permanent thing like Necrons are or Tau are for like, or Votan are to Warhammer 40k. It might just be a fun little niche army and you buy the book for it and you have fun with it. So it's important to be aware of that, okay? Like, you know, I always try and be honest with you guys, and I always try and give you as much as information because I want you to make informed decisions when deciding what games to get involved in, what armies to pick up. I want you guys to make informed decisions because, you know, the hype is a hell of a drug. And it's very easy to have the hype train go without breaks. But we could enjoy being on the hype train, but we need to know exactly what train we're on. And I think that's the way I want to describe it. So as long, you know, when it comes to getting into Renegade Crowns, you can mix and match lots of units. Of course you can. I would say have a backup plan. Okay? Have a backup plan. So you want to be getting into Old World because Old World's awesome, and you want to be getting into, and if you want to get in with Renegade Crowns, that's awesome. But if Renegade Crowns goes away, is your army able to play as something else? Like, can you play it as Empire? Could you play it as Bretonnian? Something like that, you know? So I think it'd be really easy to have, I think it's very easy to have Renegade Crowns basically become an Empire army if Renegade Crowns go away. All right? I think that's what it is. So, so I think that's the way of looking at it. Like even if you know, we were talking about how having like mixing Empire units together with Bretonnian units together and all that kind of stuff, I still think you could absolutely use that as an Empire army in the future. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's one of those things where just make sure you're going in with hope for the best but prepare for the worst. All right. So there we go. So I guess the big question is, let's get into some of the specifics of what makes Renegade Crowns. And by the way, I know some people are going to be asking, you know, is there a difference between Renegade Crowns and Dogs of War? Right now, no. I know some people are going to go, Renegade Crowns aren't Dogs of War. I'm sure you are correct in the semantics. I'm sure you are correct in the specifics. But Dogs of War, Renegade Crowns, Mercenaries, Sellswords, to me, all of this comes under one umbrella until there is an official Dogs of War rulebook. This is very much pseudo Dogs of War, mercenary companies, all that kind of stuff. So I am using the term as a catch-all term, and I'm clarifying that now, mostly because I know some people are going to be like, "Meh," but also because I want you guys to understand I'm using these terms interchangeably. All right, I want to head it off at the pass, as it were. Yeah. So there we go. Shepherd Fox, regiments of renown were what made Dogs of War unique and not Empire duplicates. Exactly. You know, regiments of renown are, you know, sort of the true Dogs of War. Yeah, yes, 100%. But I think, you know, how to put it, I think it's like people use the term vacuum cleaner and hoover interchangeably. I think Dogs of War is a catch-all. Dogs of War, for me, is a catch-all term for mercenaries in the old world. And I think if you look, Dogs of War, the original Dogs of War with the original Regiments of Renown is so far back now that getting hung up on the details will just cause confusion for like people coming into this. You know, just being like Renegade Crown, Dogs of War, you know, interchangeable terms, all good shit. I think that's fine for when we're just chatting about this shit, because we don't want to start getting into the actuallys of this. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I appreciate that you are, you know, correct in the specifics, but I'm not going to get hung up on the details. There you go. And I don't want you to think I'm being a dickhead to you or anything, mate. It's just a case of for the flow of the conversation, the flow of what we're chatting about. All right. So what makes Renegade Crowns, Dogs of War, what makes these mercenaries unique? What makes them different to Empire State troops? What makes them different to men-at-arms? What makes them stand out? You know, are they Bretonnian men-at-arms reskinned? Are they Empire State Infantry reskinned? The answer is no. And the reason Sellsword Infantry is your standard infantry. And Sellsword Infantry are one of the most customizable units I've ever seen. 2 Sellsword Infantry units that, you know, on paper you say, oh, I've got 2 squads of Sellsword Infantry, and you look down at one and it's going to be in full plate armor, armed with halberds. And then you'll look down at another and it'll be in heavy armor with crossbows. And you look down at another and it'll be like duelists wearing like light armor, shields and swords, like swashbucklers. So it's very, very reminiscent, not necessarily in the army rules that you layer on it, but it's very, very reminiscent to me of how there's an element of design philosophy there with how the old Imperial Guard infantry squads were built, and combined with how the old regimental doctrines worked. So, you know, back in the day when you faced off against an Imperial Guard infantry squad, sometimes an infantry squad would, you know, on paper, they'd all look the same. Like, that's an infantry squad, that's an infantry squad, that's an infantry squad. But, you know, in reality, you'd be like, okay, that platoon's got autocannons and grenade launchers. That platoon's got all flamers. That platoon has been equipped with warrior weapons and full carapace armor and that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, it's very reminiscent of that, where you take, and I think this is why it's Games Workshop's best work, because it shows they still have it. They can still pump out the magic when they need to, because it means that it's the art. And it is an art. It's the art of taking what looks like a generic infantry unit and making it so it is unique every single time. That it's a unit which 10 different players can fill in 10 different requirements. It's very, very, and they'll have 10 different loadouts. I think that kind of understanding of war games and that kind of understanding of unit design is what separates the good and the bad game designers. Truthfully, you know, a good game design, a good unit design is one that looks generic, but is actually very, very deep and very customizable. A bad unit design is one that, and a bad unit design is where you take a unit and it's meant to be unique, but actually, it's like a paradox almost. It's like a I don't know what's the right term. Maybe paradox is a right term. If you look at like sort of look at Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard data sheets, there's a unique data sheet for Kriegers and Cadians, but they're basically the same thing. There's, you know, Catachans feel a bit different, but the only reason Catachans feel different is because they can't. They're so limited in their special weapons. But if Kriegers, imagine for a moment if Kriegers, Catachans, and Cadians all got access to the same weapon options. Well, even though they're 3 unique data sheets, they are all basically the same thing with very, very, very little to tell them apart. Very, very little that actually makes them feel unique. And so that's the great irony. That's the great irony of modern GW's design philosophy, where it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, we've got like 7 different, you know, we've got like 3 different data sheets for like different kinds of like infantry, and 3 different data sheets for different kinds of like battle suit and all this kind of stuff. And then the reality is that actually, you know, there's no real difference between Kriegers and Cadians. I mean, there's no, like, everyone's taking plasma, everyone's taking melter. Some sergeants get plasma pistols and power swords, some get auto guns. Woo! Do you know what I mean? So the irony is that Warhammer 40k has tried to make units feel unique, and it's made them feel bland. And Old World has made units that should be bland feel very unique. So yeah, that's what's kind of and that is what I think is the beauty of the game design behind these guys. And that's just one. Everything we've been talking about is just through the lens of like one infantry option. One. And there's more than that. So I'll pull up some unit entries for you guys. I've got a let me have a look. I'm worried about the detail creep coming into Old World minis. I am a little bit as well. I'm not going to lie. But I'm not going to worry about it until it's here.
Renegade Crown.
So there's a great video here. I'm going to link you guys to the channel. Check it out. I've actually collabed with Ed before in the past. But there's a great channel here called Close Order, who has done a video on Renegade Crowns, and I often use it as a bit of a quick reference for some of the unit stats and stuff. So, if we take a look at the core, for example, this is your basic sellsword infantry, and I mean, just as a 40k player. If anyone's got by the way, if anyone's got a PDF to this, even if it's a PDF or link to the pictures, that would be a little bit easier for me to navigate. So I would appreciate that. But you know, I'm using this for now. But if you just as a 40k player, just look at the unit options that this thing has. Bear in mind that each one of these unit options is going to wildly change how the unit performs. So so you start off with essentially a guardsman stat line. You know, movement 4, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 3, attacks 1, leadership 5, 4 points model. So they are leadership 5 is very low. It's very bad in Old World. You're trying to I sent you a PDF when I first messaged. Okay, cool. I'll use that, to be fair. I will use that. I couldn't remember if it was you who sent it me, Matthew Sinclair. Apologies. Let me have a look. 1 minute. I've got it. Okay, yes, it's better. So if we look, it's just easier to navigate this way. So if we look at just your sellsword infantry, yeah, much easier, Matthew, thank you. If you look at just the sellsword infantry, you start off with a very, very, very basic stat line. And then you can pay 1 point per model to make them have 1 extra weapon skill. And again, it doesn't look like much, but already you're getting differentiations. You know, are these regular sellswords or are these grizzled sellswords? People that have been, you know, beware of an old man in an industry where men die young. Do you know what I mean? But you know, then you just look at the amount of options you have for this unit. So and each one of these options comes with its own pros and cons. If you're new to Warhammer 40k, this is going to sound like a bit mental. So you can equip the entire unit with thrusting spears. Thrusting spears allow you to fight in an extra rank. So normally you can fight in 2 ranks as infantry. Thrusting spears allows you to fight in 3 ranks, but you only use your base strength of 3, which isn't very good when you're trying to wound like an orc or on like 5s. It can make it quite difficult. More attacks, but less strength. Or you've got halberds. Halberds, which are also 1 point per model. Now, halberds don't let you fight in an extra rank, but instead they give you +1 strength and +1 AP. So do you want more attacks with less strength, or do you want less attacks with more strength and AP? Then you've got great weapons. Now, great weapons are great. They give you +2 strength. And bear in mind, in Old World, strength and toughness is not the same as 40k. So in Old World, if I'm strength 5 and you're toughness 3, I wound you on 2s. Obviously, in 40k, in that situation, you'd wound on 3s, right? So basically, if my strength is equal to your toughness, I wound you on a 4. If my strength is 1 higher than your toughness, I wound you on a 3. If my strength is 2 or more higher than your toughness, I wound you on a 2, essentially. So great weapons giving you +2 strength is really big, because it means you go from wounding other toughness 3 infantry on 2s, and it also means that you start wounding those tough enemy infantry units like orcs and chaos warriors and beastmen, and you're wounding them on 3s instead, making it eminently more reliable. So you're like, okay, great, I'll give everybody great weapons then, right? It's only 2 points per model. That's fantastic. And they're +2 AP as well. So fucking hell, +2 strength, +2 AP. Amazing. Why wouldn't I take that every time? The problem with taking great weapons is they strike last. They're slow, which means in an ongoing combat, your opponent will get to strike before you. And if your opponent gets to strike before you, any models that are killed don't get to fight in that round of combat. So let's say you've got a unit which is like 5 wide and 4 deep, so 20 in the unit in total. If your opponent kills 5, and you fight in 2 ranks, remember, if your opponent kills 5 guys first, then that's 5 guys that aren't going to get to fight, and you're only going to get 5 attacks out of your unit rather than 10. So greatswords are really good, but you're basically always striking after your opponent, which means that it's a real trade-off. Okay, and then you've got the other options where you've got ranged options. So you've got crossbows and handguns. Crossbows have got a longer range. So crossbows have got a 30-inch range, strength 4, but no AP. Handguns have got a shorter range, 24-inch range, but they're strength 4, but they come with 1 AP. And there's a bit of armor bane on both, but we won't worry about that for now. We won't get into the nitty-gritty of the special rules. But the point is that, like, oh, look, there's a bit of a trade-off there. Do you go for the extra range and less AP, or do you go for the shorter range and more AP? And that's actually a really, really, really big, that's a really, really big decision. And for as long as crossbows and handguns have existed, there have been internet forum discussion pages dozens upon dozens upon dozens long of people arguing between which is better, crossbows and handguns. And the reason's really simple. In Old World, you deploy 24 inches apart typically, just over 24 inches apart, and there's not that much cover, right? There's not that much landslide blocking cover. So, and you can't shoot over other units unless you're on a hill. You can't shoot over other units. That's just the nature of line of sight. You can't see through your own units, right? So crossbows and handguns is a really big decision, because if your opponent deploys just a tiny bit back, like 24.1 inches away, and you get the first turn on the roll off, and you've taken handguns, then you can't shoot your opponent because you're not going to be in range. Now you can move, but if you move with handguns or crossbows, you suffer a -2 to hit penalty. -2 to hit penalty. Shooting over long range, another -1 to hit penalty. So that's -3 to hit. Suddenly you're hitting on 7. So that is possible, but it's via the mechanics of the game, but it's very hard. So, or you've taken crossbows and you get the first turn, and you're like, sick, I'll just stay still. I'll just stay still and I'll just shoot because I've got the 30-inch range. So do you see what is the beauty of a unit like this? Each time you pick sellsword infantry, you are going to have to, how you equip your sellsword infantry is going to provide you with a specific tool for your toolbox. But 2 sellsword infantry units will have completely different battlefield roles. Some sellsword infantry you'll be trying to get the most durability out of them for the cheapest possible cost. Probably go like heavy armor and shields, which for 7 points per model, which is pretty cheap, for 7 points model will give you a 3-up armor save, which is phenomenal. That's a really, really good anvil unit. Some infantry you'll want to go on the offensive with. Sometimes you're like, okay, we're going to go like full plate armor, and we're going to go great weapons, and we're going to go fucking swinging. Sometimes you want a little bit of a catch-all unit. Maybe you go for halberds and heavy armor or something. But what if you've got crossbow infantry versus handgun infantry? All of this. Do you see how like it's one unit, but infinite opportunities, infinite possibilities? And even when it comes to, and here's the great thing, when it comes to ranged units, when it comes to melee units, you've got some like interesting decisions to make. Do you go for sellsword infantry with heavy armor and shields? That's 7 points per model, and that'll give you a unit which has a 3-up save. But you're only fighting in you've not got spears, so you're not fighting in 3 ranks. You've not got halberds or great weapons, so you're not getting extra strength. So you've just got 2 ranks of infantry fighting with very low strength attacks. But you're very tough. You're not going to do much damage, but you're very tough. You're very tough. So so that's one option. Or do you go for spears, shields, and heavy armor? Now, the advantage of going spears, shields, and heavy armor is that you will be 8 points per model, but you're going to have a 4-up save because heavy armor plus shields. By the way, you get heavy armor gives you a 5-up save. Shields give you +1 to that save. If you've got a shield and a hand weapon, it gives you another +1 to that save, because the shield is protecting you and the hand weapon is something it's a sword, so you parry with it, essentially. All right, so that's represented by the extra +1 to your save. So do you go for spears and shields and heavy armor, which means your save won't be quite as good, so you'll be on a 4-up save, but you'll be getting those extra attacks. Or do you go for halberds? Now, halberds are 2-handed, so you can't take you can't take shields. You can pay for them, but you can't use them. So you're only on a 5-up save, but you're going to be on a 5-up save. But you're going to be a little cheaper than Spearman. You're going to be 7 points per model. But you're going to have more strength. Or do you go for great weapons and heavy armor, being 8 points per model, and be durable with the most, with the most strength and the most AP, but be slow? Yeah. So so that's their kind of your choices on on melee units. Yeah, you could. There are other choices. You could just go light armor and thrusting spears, just as cheap as possible. Pure bodies, pure bodies. I think if you just go, you just say, look, I don't care about my save. I'm gonna have a 6-up save, which is like basically nothing. But I'm gonna have but the extra points that I save, I'll be able to get more men, which will mean that I'll have more wounds. So do you try and get durability through wounds? There's loads of options. What if you go great weapons and light armor? What if you go great weapons and light armor? Yeah. But so there's loads of options there, but then you get to the ranged options. Now, obviously, we've talked about crossbows versus handguns, but what about armor? Okay, so traditional thinking and lines of arguments have been to not give your ranged units any armor whatsoever, because the idea is that what's going to protect them is they're going to be at range. And so you don't give them any armor because they're not going to use it because they're not going to be in melee. I actually refute that because I recently charged into some Dwarven Thunderers who had heavy armor and shields. And I was a dedicated melee unit and I got fucked. I lost that combat to a ranged unit. So you could go for just cheap ranged units and not go for any armor. Or you could take a handgun and heavy armor and shields and have a unit which can shoot the enemy. And then when the enemy closes the distance, they can close ranks, and they can close ranks, and you can have a really tough anvil unit. It's very it feels it's a really cool playstyle actually, because you can imagine them like unleashing like volleys of like handgun fire, and then when the enemy gets close, they sort of like sling the handguns round behind them and draw out their swords and shields kind of thing. It's a very cool playstyle. I remember at ranged, when the enemy's shooting back at you, you'd have a 4-up save because heavy armor plus shields. But in melee, you'd have a 3-up save, heavy armor plus shields plus hand weapon. So it's actually a totally valid option. It's expensive though. You are looking at 10 points per model, 9 points if you decide to go for crossbows. But you've got a unit, you've got a unit which is truly capable, very elite, very, very, very elite, and so you can take a horde of poorly equipped sellswords, or you can dial it all the way up and have an elite company of extremely capable mercenaries. Yeah. And it does get a little crazy, because you can take 1 unit of veteran sellswords per 1,000 points, I believe. And so for a lot of people, if you look, for a lot of people, that's actually like all the infantry they're going to take. Most people will take like 2 big bricks of infantry. I like 3, but I love infantry, right? But yeah. But if you were to take 2 bricks of veteran sellswords, well, the options, it might only be 1 point. This is what I love about Old World again. It might only be 1 point per man to get extra to get that weapon skill, and that might not look like much, but then the sellswords, the veteran sellswords, actually get access to additional equipment as well. So you're not just, oh, pay 1 point, you know, not to shit on 40k, but 40k, it would be really simple, wouldn't it? It would be veteran guardsman, 7 points per model, 1 extra ballistic skill. That would be it. That would be all it was. And then in Old World, it's like you pay for veteran guardsmen. You'd already pay for veteran sellswords, and you're going to get access to additional equipment. And what's really, really, really important about this additional equipment is that it has a huge impact. A huge, huge impact on how your unit is going to feel. So 2 things that really stand out with veteran sellswords is the fact that they can have full plate armor. Full plate armor. So full plate armor gives you a 4-up save. So suddenly, because everything we've kind of described, not quite, actually not at all, but full plate armor is actually like quite rare in Warhammer the Old World. For example, Chaos Warriors, I say standard Chaos Warriors are considered some of the best elite infantry. They don't get full plate armor. They get heavy armor. Dwarves, who are considered some of the finest craftsmen, most dwarf units don't get full plate armor. 1 dwarf unit gets full plate armor, Ironbreakers. 1 Warriors of Chaos unit gets full plate armor, the Chosen Warriors. Literally the Warlord's chosen bodyguards. And then you've got Renegade Crowns, which they can take full plate armor on their core infantry. And so suddenly we're not just taking, we're not just taking Empire State Troops, which have got some like additional options. We've suddenly got what looks like on the surface just a basic infantry unit, which is starting to feel very, very spicy. Layers. Good game design is all about layers. If I have full plate armor, and then I take spears and shields, then suddenly I am getting my 3-up save, and I'm getting my extra attacks. It's going to cost me 11 points per model, but I'm going to have a unit which, quite honestly, and let me tell you, as an Empire player, this is very, very rare, and it's very, very nice. And I can confirm this because I've literally done it. I can take an infantry unit that can actually go toe-to-toe with other people's elite infantry. I'm not gonna give any spoilers away for the game that I played against Simon yesterday, but Simon loves his sword masters. I had a unit of veteran state troops with full plate armor and halberds stop his sword masters dead in their tracks. Simon came swinging in, thinking it was going to be an easy kill. Think about it. You've seen what those sword masters can do to orcs. Those sword masters will cleave through orcs like a hot knife through butter. But against my grizzled veteran state troops, led by a captain, they went toe-to-toe with some of the Ulthuan's finest warriors. Because of the fact that they were veteran and they had full plate armor, and I had halberds, and also I had a cheeky bit of magic helping them out as well. Yeah. Just bang, stopped them dead. And it was really cool to see. We were both very, very impressed by it. Both very, very impressed by it. And then you get drilled. Well, actually, let's not move on full plate armor. I actually don't know of any unit in the game which can take full plate armor and ranged weapons. Someone might have to correct me. But I don't think there's any other unit out there which can take full plate armor and ranged weapons. Now, I'm not sure what's actually better. I think maybe, you know what's kind of interesting? I think heavy armor and shield is actually probably better because that'll come in at 3 points per model. And it'll be the same result. Because you can only get a 3-up save. You only get with parry, you can only go up to a maximum of a 3-up save, can't you? Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. So you might be better off. That's actually probably an option. You can go to a 2-up. Infantry and cav can go to a 2-up. Oh my god. Oh my god. So Iron Breakers have a 2-up save then. Because they've got full plate. Yeah, max 3+. Oh, okay. It is max 3+ with... okay, fine. So when I say full plate... Right. I'm getting... If I take full plate armor and shields, I'm on a 3-up save, right? In fact, chat. If I have full plate armor, shields, and hand weapons, what save do I have? Full plate, shields, and hand weapons. Three plus in combat. Right. So yeah. So there isn't any point in taking full plate and ranged. Yeah, I guess. I'm not too worried about the range though, to be fair. Because ranged is either fucking bows or it's fucking cannon. Either way. But I think it's going to go with 2+. Okay, fair. So you're probably not going to take full plate handgunners. But you will absolutely take heavy armor, shield, handgunners. Yeah. It's not worthless. No, it's not worthless at all. It would be funny to see... it'd be so funny to see a wood elf army with all of their bows, or a high elf army with all of their bows, and then just rock up with like 2 massive units of crossbow and full plate and shield guys, and just be like, yep, what are you gonna do? Yeah, man. Drilled is really good as well. So drilled means you can redress the ranks every time you move, including charging. So you could, in theory, sort of march up the board nice and wide, doing volleys of handgun fire, probably hitting nothing because of the -2 to hit, but volleys of handgun fire, and then when you charge, go for the rank bonus or something. But yeah. So, and let's just remind ourselves, we've looked at 1 unit in this entire thing. Just remember, this is 1 unit. This is our basic infantry, and we've already got dozens and dozens of variations and options. We've not even got into things like magical war gear or anything. It's fucking wild, man. And when you get to the special rules, they get Close Order and Horde and Warband, which is actually better than what State Troops get. Yeah. Actually, because State Troops only get Close Order and Horde. Now, what these mean by what these mean is Close Order, you get +1 to your combat res, and you can claim 2 ranks for combat resolution. Horde means you can claim you get +1 to your rank bonus again. And Warband means that your rank bonus improves your leadership. So this is where this leadership 5, it's as a player, you can leadership 5, leadership 6, you can manage your leadership. Because you start off on piss poor leadership 6. State Troops have Horde now, Sir Newbie. It got FAQ. They have Horde now. They didn't used to, but they do now. So you start off leadership 6, add +3 to your leadership because of Close Order, Horde, and Warband. If you've got the ranks, and suddenly you're leadership 9. But as you lose ranks, there's a chance, if you've got at least 3 ranks, then you'll be +3 to your leadership. If you let's say you're like 5 ranks deep, okay, you lose 1 rank, fine. You lose 2 ranks, fine. You lose, it's after the first one. So not including the front rank. If you're 5 ranks deep, you lose the first rank, you're fine. But if you lose the second rank, you actually then go down to leadership 8. Basically, the sellsword's leadership gets worse as more of them die, which is absolutely awesome because that's exactly what would happen with sellswords. They're not going to fucking stick around if it looks like they're not going to be alive to collect that paycheck. So if there's loads of them, then the fight's obviously going well. Then they'll be braver. But if their officer if the officer dies and they start losing rank and start losing men left, right, and center, they're just going to fucking bail. They're just going to bail. They're going to run away, collect that paycheck another day. Yeah. It's brilliant. And all of this is 1 unit. Warband also Warband lets you reroll your charge. So actually, your sellswords are more likely to make the charge into combat as well. They're more likely to make their charge as well. So, yeah, they're just, which I like that not only does it make their leadership better, but I like the fact that it gives them that reroll because you can imagine, the sellswords are like, we've got to get stuck in because we've been paid to do this job. And if we don't prove our worth, maybe the boss won't pay us. Maybe our employer won't pay us. So let's get stuck in, start fighting. And then when it comes to the, when it comes to the pay, we should be able to get a bit more. Or, we should at least, earn, we should at least fulfill our contract. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I love that. And that's 1 unit, man. And you know what's crazy? It's exactly the same with the knights. It's exactly the same with the knights. You've got Freeblade, Knights, Veteran Freeblades. The difference is here that one gets an extra pip of strength over the other. Now, what's interesting is Knights are actually quite good leadership. Knights are actually quite good leadership because the idea is that even though they're now like Renegade, they're still knights at heart. Yeah. They're still, they've still at some point been part of a Empire Knightly Order, or at some point they've had the tenets of chivalry drilled into them in the Kingdom of Bretonnia. So it's cool how they are knights at heart who are now maybe a bit like dishonored. But they are still knights at heart, whereas the sellswords, they ain't knights. They ain't knights. But again, you know, your free blade knights, for example, they come as standard with hand weapon and heavy armor. And then you've got quite a lot of customization here. So, you know, you can give them shields. You could just give them shields. Oh, actually, this is really, really cool because... Oh, no, do they have to take lances? Ah, that's a shame. You have to give them lances or great weapons. I was going to say it would be so, so good if you didn't need to give them an option. Because having knights with hand weapons and shield is quite unique. But you could basically, you know, lances are good. You get strength and AP bonus, but only on the charge. If the enemy charges you, you're a bit fucked. Whereas great weapons, you always get your strength bonuses and stuff. And you can get full plate armor. And I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a lot of Bretonnian. I reckon, you know, everyone's talking about Empire players becoming Renegade crowns. I reckon there's going to be a lot of Bretonnian players. I reckon there's a lot of Bretonnian players that are going to end up coming over to Renegade crowns because they want a taste of that sweet, sweet full plate armor, which they can't get with their own. Yeah. That's true, Sir Newbie. Every model does have hand weapons. That's true. So you could have knights with shields and lances. I'd be like, I'm just going to choose to be on a 3-up save, please. Which is pretty good for knights. And then we've got, yeah, the full plate armor there is very, very nice. Hiling Outriders are cool. Hiling Outriders are very, very cool. So they're fast cav. What I love is that, you know, it says, you know, you'll notice in, there's these representing this unit in your game. So Empire of Mana, Kingdom Bretonnian cavalry models are all ideal for representing free blade knights. Empire state troops, state missile troops, and militia are all ideal for representing your sellswords. Also, definitely fucking Bretonnian men at arms. What I like about the Hiling Outriders is it's like, oh yeah, Empire Pistoliers, Bretonnian mounted yeomen, but also High Elf Illyrian Reavers. Which is kind of interesting. So it's touching upon the idea of not everyone is going to be human in a mercenary company. Border Prince Organ Gun. So, yeah, Dwarf Organ Guns, Dwarven Mercenaries. And Empire Artillery, of course. And then you've got, this stuff's great as well. So you can upgrade your characters. You can upgrade each. Let's have a look. To represent this, any Renegade Lord outgunned wizard within an army made using Renegade Crowns of Infamy muster list may have a single infant origin chosen from the detail of the list. Each infant origin gives a character certain bonuses. So yeah, you could so each character you can give an origin story. So you can have your character. This is like a mercenary. This is like it gives you there's a bit of flavor text, but basically you can make your characters have extra leadership and stubborn, and they give the stubborn to the unit. You can have Renegade Knights, which are extra like disdainful. No, they get noble disdain, where when the other units panic and run away, they don't care. You can have a noble outlaw, which is kind of cool. Gives them like some empire shit going on here. Like they become like immune to panic, and they can start being able to take like extra like weapons. And then you get the Wandering Diestro, which is you can make a character into a duelist. I don't know what that does. It's slightly cut off. But yeah, you get +2. So you can make a dueling character. So you can have +2 modified to their weapon skill, and then you gain feint and dodge, which I'm not sure what that does, but I reckon I can find out. Oh, there's another one as well, I think. Oh, no. Oh, man. What does it do? It doesn't... I can't see what it does. I think it makes your opponent reroll hits. They dare when I FAQ'd it. Ah, okay. Yeah. It's kind of cool, though. There you go. Oh, my God. So you can actually have your duelist. You can have your duelist lead a unit, and then and you can make the brigands also be duelists. That's so cool. That's so cool, man. That's so cool. But it's only on the brigands. It's only on the brigands, which are quite as well. That's actually not here. It's on the another unit. But yeah, and this bear in mind, guys, these are just the units in the book. But if you look at the army list composition, you can take wizards from Kingdom of Bretonnia. You can take Free Company Militia and Empire Archers from the Empire. You can take Border Prince Brigands from Kingdom of Bretonnia. You can take cannons from Border Prince Bretonnia. You can add up to 33% of your army may be spent on mercenaries. Any dogs of war from any arcane journal, i.e. any that has a dogs of war rule, allowing it to be taken as mercenaries in one or more grand army composition lists. Note that mercenaries are subject to misbehaving mercenary rules as described on page 279. And there's a lot of mercenary rules. Mercenaries are like, you can take Imperial Dwarf mercenaries. You can take a giant. You have a mercenary giant. There's a lot of mercenary units, and misbehaving mercenaries is great. There is a chance that your units do not do as they're told, but it's very, very flavorful. Yeah. So wrapping all of this up, and then I've got a lot of super chats I'm very far behind on. I do apologize. Thank you to all of you guys for your patience. Wrapping all of this up, this army is the most your dude's army that Games Workshop has produced in years. And it's amazing. And this army that we see here is the standard that is actually the standard that we should expect from Games Workshop. It's the standard we should demand from Games Workshop. If every single codex came out like this, and every single book had the care and attention and love and passed the vibe check like this one did, I would never complain about Games Workshop prices ever again. Because this is a premium product which they can justify a premium price for. But when you're putting out very clearly half-baked products, well, then I'm gonna start getting a bit pissed off about it because I've not got anything to take the sting away. So there you go. So the new Dogs of War faction is genuinely Games Workshop's best work in years. And as someone who has played a game with it, not only does it feel right in the rules, it feels right on the tabletop. I took 3 different infantry units. I took regular sellswords with heavy armor, spears, and shields. I took veteran sellswords with full plate armor and great swords, and then I took veteran style swords with full plate armor and halberds. The great swords I deployed wide. The halberdiers I deployed deep because I took the Origin Might of Melangio, whatever it is. I took the Telian Origin, and I took advantage of Phalanx. Yes, I paid for all of it. Don't worry, I didn't miss any points cost and everything. And then I took a unit of Spearmen in Phalanx formation as well. And every single unit felt exactly the way it should do. Every single unit. And then I gave each unit a captain, and it was just brilliant. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. So yeah, this is great. I have, when was, and put it, guys, let's finish on this note. When was the last time that you heard me praise a Games Workshop product like this? Not for months. Not in 2025. I mean, I was a bit hyped for the Guard Codex. That's about it. I don't like being salty. I don't like being negative. When I bitch and moan and whine to you guys, I don't feel better about it. It is part of like a necessary process because I have found it extremely valuable being able to air my thoughts to you guys. And you guys being able to, like, you know, either like go, you know, there, Mordian, it'll be all right, or, you know, counter and, you know, make me see things from another perspective, or agree with me, and so I know I'm not going mad. But I actually don't like being negative at all. I like being happy. I like being excited. It's why I've taken to Conflict 47 so much, because it's a game that just makes me happy. It's why I've taken to Old World so much. It's a game that makes me happy. It's why I got surprised, considering how much I love Old World. It's why I was surprisingly negative around things like Cathay and especially the Match Play Guide, because I felt like we as an Old World community were forgetting who we are. We're the vibes community. Why the fuck were we trying to be 40k players? Like, I play 40k when I want to be a 40k player, and I play Old World when I want to be a vibes player. Do you know what I mean? And I play action when I want to be a historical war game, and I don't mind. I like putting these different hats on. I can almost switch my brain into different modes, right? I want to be as excited for this. I want to be excited like this for every Games Workshop faction, because that I like talking about things in a nice way. I like talking about things in a nice way, and I also want to say one other thing, and I think it's a really important thing. Possibly that saved the most important bit till last. This army is one that I am more excited for than any other in the last 2 years. And it's not coming with any model releases. Models are important, but I, as the player, need to have a wide selection of models that I can choose from. I need a buffet of models. I don't want a set menu. I want a buffet. This book is great because it's the ultimate buffet. It's the ultimate buffet. A week book coming out with pretty models is with pretty models, and I can only choose those models, is so much worse than a strong set of rules with no models. And games, this is the thing, guys, I don't think Games Workshop understands. If Games Workshop doesn't make specific models for a faction, but that faction is really good, and I'm excited about it, and I want to support it, I'm at the number one place I'm probably going to go to buy those models is going to be them. If they released mercenary companies put it this way, I'm probably going to go and buy some older models for this army. And I have a lot of Empire already. But I've been looking for an excuse. I've been looking for an excuse to get a Bretonnian peasant horde. And you know what? This might just be the way I do it. I'm going to, and I got a 3D printer. If you treat me right, GW, I'll put the hard work in to buy your models and make them work on the tabletop. If you treat me right, and if you release a good product, I will want to support you. If you treat me badly, it doesn't matter how pretty your models are, I'm not going to want to support you. It's that simple. Games Workshop. I want to wank you off. I want to be your ball washer. This whole stream and this whole segment, which is probably going to be a stream highlight, is proof of that. But you've just been making it really hard recently. You've been making it hard for me to wash your balls. But as I've always, and a lot of people think that I'm a GW hater. A lot of people think that I'm a salty boy. A lot of people think that I like making content shitting on Games Workshop. And the truth is, I don't. I would much rather make positive content every single day about you, Games Workshop, and be your number one fucking hype man. I want to do that for you. But you've been making it hard for me to do that. So GW, I'll say it again, loud and proud, so you can hear it, and so everybody here can hear it. So people don't get it twisted. So people don't think I'm a GW hater or anything like that. I treat every games company the same. Every single one. Warlord, Games Workshop, and others. When you do games, when you do something right, I will praise you. But when you do something wrong, I will lambaste you. And you've given me a lot of excuses to lambaste you recently. But as you can see, I'm totally fair. And I will praise you when you get it right. And in the case of Renegade Crowns, they've got it fucking right. There we go. There we fucking go. All right. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion,
Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Pickalock the Forged.
Seriously, guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.